Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to today's edition of Read TFOS, where I take old stories from across the internet and read them for your entertainment. This particular story is called The Dragon and the Scribe, written by Jack Bragg. He had to be the stupidest educated man in the kingdom. Only a fool would mock the knights and their reputed failure to slay the great beast on the edge of the borders. One joke about their swords being duller than their wits, and he found himself in the uncomfortable position of having one of those swords pressed against his rapidly beating heart. They were as sharp as they were supposed to be. Ow. The kingdom was thoroughly on their side. You will return with the dragon's heart in your hands, or we'll place yours there. Go. As simple as that. He was now a dead man. He pressed the satchel with his precious journals to his chest. The sore's cut hurt, but it proved he was alive. He might as well take them, not like anyone in that stupid court was law-learned enough to read anyways. No reason to leave them behind. Here it was, the literal and figurative fork in the road. To the left, a cart rode through the farms and fields of the peasantry. If he could go fast enough, he could leave this fading little kingdom behind. But the next was no better. The way the royalty was interwed, and the inbred he thought of to himself, and there was nowhere for leagues that wouldn't return him to his heartless fate. To the right, a footpath through the trees, oak, maple, and elm for now, but would turn to lark and pine as it approached the base of the mountain. Past that, who knew? The dragon crept the road after that. It didn't share geographical information as a rule. The knights could bugger themselves. He wanted to live. He turned to the cart road. If he walked all night, he could reach the borders. Once past those, he could figure something out. How much effort would those stuffed-up barely royals expend one little scribe? He doubted they even knew his name. The 5 arrows that impacted the road in front of him gave him a pretty good idea of how much effort. The squad of forest rangers proved it. How long were they following him? Scribe! Nope, didn't know his name. You were ordered to see the dragon. My orders were to make sure you did. The rangiest of rangers barked out. Can't you just say that you couldn't find me? Ha! Ha! How about I died of fright? Save you the trouble of following me. Who said it was any trouble? But if I'm going to see the dragon, you'll be also. We all have faith that you'll protect us, don't we, lads? A random nodding of heads in the group. And I know for a fact that we can run faster than you if you can't, right? Head shaking turned to chuckles. Oh, the leader was a funny one. Can't you just kill me now? Why make me walk all that way before I get fried and eaten? The leader looked affronted. Because, lad, we are rangers. It is our job to help folk that are lost in the woods to find their way. And your way is the other fork. The scribe sighed in defeat. He slowly turned and walked down the footpath. After a few steps, he turned around to plead again, but the rangers were gone. Well, hiding anyways. He was pretty sure that they were still there. He had a weird feeling on his back now that he knew that they were there, so he slung his satchel over his shoulder to protect him from behind. He walked all the rest of the afternoon. When the sun finally was setting, he stepped off the path and made a small fire. The king and the knights hadn't seen fit to waste any supplies on a lost cause. Who cared if he died hungry? He gave up hope that the rangers would join him at the fire and share food when it burned to coals without making themselves known. Help people, his ass. The morning found him shivering and stiff. He hadn't walked that far since he had taken the job. Scribes sat at desks and tables to perform their services. His blisters and cramps should have been on his fingers and shoulders. Sore feet were an unwelcome novelty. He took his morning piss in the closest bush that looked big enough to hide a ranger, and set back up to the path. He left his fire without securing it. He didn't feel any particular responsibility to preserve the kingdom today. Come mid-morning, he found the border. The dragon wasn't subtle about where his territory lay. 3 great gouges crossed the path. The trees on one side were full and lush, and the others were scrub bushes and charred earth. His courage faltered. He turned back. The leader of the rangers was standing directly in the middle of the path. Without a word, he gestured the scribe onward. The scribe hoped that he was the cause of the skull on the man's face and the dark stain on his leggings. The scribe smirked as he obeyed. It was something, at least. Crossing those gashes was like entering another world. This could be the end of the world for all he knew. No one who had crossed had ever come back to report what they had found. Maybe it was his impending doom, but everything seemed richer and more real. The sun felt harder on his skin now that he had left the dappling shadows of the trees. Smells seemed more real to him than they ever had. Why live in a smoky, draughty castle when the mountain air was so rich? For the first time in his adult life, he felt truly alive. All for it to end today. He wasn't sure how far he had to walk to find it, or if he even would before he starved. All maps ended at those gashes. Here the dragon dwells. The noon sun was passing when the path crossed in front of a great cleft in the wall of the mountain. The scribe thought, if I were a dragon, I suppose that would be a good cave to live in. He looked around at the view. He had climbed farther than he realized. The border he had crossed this morning was barely visible now. The ground rolled slowly down and away, covered in pale grasses and random boulders. No trees or bushes to hide behind. Yes, this would be a good spot to hold a dragon. It felt symbolic when he turned his back on the world to face the cave. He finally found a futile courage inside himself. Why now? Why not when he was facing those beast-mothered thugs in green? It would have been useful then. Now it just gave him a clear head to size up how he would die. The cave opening was roughly triangular, with lines in the rock marking it to look like two books had fallen together, making a hole to reach behind a bookshelf. Books! That was an ideal. Maybe he could make something out of the senseless death. Maybe he could get someone to remember his name. It seemed one way to live on after today. Now, if only the dragon would cooperate. The great fire drake stood back in the shadows of his cave. The cool air from the interior of the mountain was a calming salve over the heat of his interior furnace. Normally, he would have stoked his fires hotter at the sound of a horse and metal that alerted him to the approach of another of those damnable human knights. It was getting to be an absolute infestation of humans on the other side of his marker. Most of them were no trouble, but those foul-tasting knights insisted on trying to take his head. At least, the horses were tasty. But this one seemed different. He didn't smell of metal, for one thing. He also didn't bring a horse. He wasn't overly fond of the taste of human, but if they didn't bring him anything else. This one acted differently also. No sharp pointy things pointed at his cave. Not that they ever did any good. Just a sack of some sort. He inhaled slowly and deeply. Paper. And feathers. A very odd human indeed. He watched as the human approached the entrance of the cave. He sat down, arranged his wood leaves in a neat pile in front of him, and simply called into the darkness, "Hello!" Now the dragon was crazy with curiosity. He had existed for millennia, and this was finally something new. He took another deep breath. He wouldn't put it past humans to come up with a clever trap. Some of them were actually quite intelligent. Not those doltish knights, of course. Those were all yell, yell, stab, stab, cook and die. But some could be quite novel. Nope, no other humans were around. He leaned forward, allowing his head to fall into the light of the opening. The scribe sat staring into the darkness. His call into the cave had echoed into the darkness, and he was beginning to think that he had drastically overthought his situation. When a massive head came floating out of the darkness, he farted in terror. When the dragon recoiled a moment later, the scribe was sure that he would be killed instantly, betrayed by his own anus. I'm so sorry. Please forgive me, Sir Dragon," he stammered out. "Who are you?" Hot words burned in his mind. My name is Martin, Sir Dragon, and I was a scribe for King Osgarek the Gouted." "Why are you here, Martin the scribe?" More burning words. He began to sweat. "I mocked the knights of the realm, and was sentenced to death at your hands." "I do not obey the edicts of the little human king." "My sentence is to bring him your heart, or he will show me mine. I'm no warrior, so my death is a matter of fact. At your hands or no. I would like to ask a boon," said Dragon. King Osgarek was supposed to be the greatest royal in the land. Other kings in the area took his will as their own. But Martin had never felt in the presence of pure majesty as he did now. This was not a beast, but a creature of a higher order than a mere human could ever be. The great head turned to focus, an eye straight at him. Martin felt the dragon's attention focused dangerously on him. "Speak your wish, Martin who dares." "I'm a scribe, Sir Dragon. My only wish has been to write stories worth reading. As my last act of this earth, I would like to write the greatest of all. Your story, if you permit. Perhaps, if I can do that, the name of Martin will be worth remembering to someone, somewhere." He brushed the sweat from his brow with his sleeve. "That is a boon larger than you are, Martin the impertinent. Gather your leaves and feathers. I'll tell you some of our story, but it will take longer than the sun allows. Enter the mountain." Martin watched the huge head pull back into the darkness. Now that he had seen and felt the power of such a thing, he realized he was extremely small. What were his ambitions compared to the majesty of the beast, or rather being, within that shadow? What possible reason could it have to bother with him? Fatalistically, he gathered his things, sent a prayer to whatever powers that be, and stepped out of the world. The dragon was not hindered by the darkness as he watched Martin walk willingly into his lair. This must be the bravest human the dragon had ever encountered. He was terrified and reeked of sour fear and lingering flatulence to the dragon's sensitive nose. But he pushed himself on, regardless. Those bothersome knights could learn a thing or two. Martin inched on, one hand holding his back, the other pushing away the darkness. The dragon shifted and held his tail out into the sunlight outside the cave. With a careful adjustment, the shining scales down his back reflected enough light down the hole to keep Martin safe, but most of the dragon's bulk shadowed. No sense in testing that bravery more than necessary at this point. Martin felt the air change as the dragon moved in the darkness. He managed to keep himself from bolting head-on into nothingness, but only barely. When some light fell around him, he was relieved, so nice not to die quite yet. The silence as he walked was getting uncomfortable, so he ventured, "Sir Dragon, how did you learn to speak human language?" "I do not speak human tongue. I speak the language of the children of fire." "Sir, the children of fire?" "You seem to be more educated than most humans I meet," Martin who asks. "Are you a learned man?" "I think I am, sir." "Most do. You are aware of the four worldly elements, earth, air, wind, and fire." "Precisely. Like speaks to like. The fishes of the sea, the birds of the air, the beasts of the land can speak among their kind, but fewest and greatest are the children of fire. The dragons are the first of the fire children, though our time is passing." "But how can I understand you?" "Maybe not so learned after all." Martin felt like he had failed a test. Trying to keep the dragon's graces, he pressed the conversation on. "Sir, my writing will be better if may I learn your name, Sir Dragon?" "Harold." Martin stopped so quickly, he felt the air pushed by the dragon's bulk pass him by. He turned around to find the dragon's face merely feet from his. He hadn't even realized it. He was following. Where was the light coming from? But more importantly, Harold? Harold, really, not Gorgath or Renderer the Bloody or even Azarath. Harold doesn't seem very dragonish. What is wrong with Harold? It just seems so, I don't know, human. It's a human name. Maybe it's a dragon name that the humans took to sound more powerful. Harold doesn't sound like a very powerful human. Humans aren't very powerful. Any name they take won't sound powerful." Fair point, Sir Harold. Just Harold. I am not a stupid knight." "Thank you, Harold. My writing would have sounded odd calling you Sir Dragon all the time." "You are welcome, Martin." A few moments of silence while Martin rolled the thoughts of the dragon names around passed before he remembered his question from a moment ago. "Harold, how is it that I can see? We are far beyond the mouth of the cave, yet light doesn't lessen." "The rock is phosphorescent. It releases light for us." Phosphorescent. Martin tripped over the oddest word he had ever heard. "Phosphorescent. But now think of the union between the elements of earth and fire, stone that emits light." Martin was feeling less and less educated with every step. Maybe he wasn't worthy of telling the dragons, Harold's, story after all. Maybe he was just worthy of being a snack for a greater being. Maybe mankind wasn't at the top of the order of things like he thought he should be. Harold, I don't think I am worthy of telling your story to the world. I don't think so either. Martin knew it. He steeled himself for the blow. I am ready. I am ready. I thank you for what you have shown me so far. Freeing me of the sin of hubris is a great gift. You speak truly, Martin, the learner. Now open your eyes to see the truth of your mouth speaks. Have you not seen the light grow? The end of the tunnel approaches, and the sun is not yet halfway set. Behold! Lost in his thoughts, Martin hadn't noticed the growing light. Martin blinked the dark out of his eyes as he approached the end of the tunnel and behold the floor of the valley inside the mountain. The circular valley must have been miles edge to edge. The center was dominated by a blue lake, with grasslands and rich crops in neat rows spreading away from it. Around to the edges, where the floor became too steep, cottages and buildings hewn from the mountain itself sat. And amongst all were people. So many people. What is this? As I said, the time of the dragons is ending. Soon there'll only be one fire child left. This place, and all the ones like it, are our gift to you. A place for you to learn the nature of the world, to look up from grubbing in the dirt and understand it. I brought you here not to tell you my story, but to tell yours. Record what is learned here so that the next generation stands higher up the mountain, high enough to, one day maybe, reach the stars themselves. I don't have the words, Harold, but I soon will, Martin added, as the dragon turned a great eye to him. This place is amazing, so far beyond it that what I attended should not be called a school. But please tell me, who is the other fire child? Don't make me eat you, Martin the Dense. End of story. I'd greatly like to thank our Tier 5 channel members, Caspar Arnholtz, John Creighton, Manatharia, 050, Dragzoon WRE, and Elijah Silvercross. Thank you very much.